So one-time stimulus checks are available for people that are experiencing financial troubles. Don't worry, because one-time stimulus payments are now available. Joe Biden wants immediate action on the Build Back Better bill, and he has also set up meetings with important lawmakers to reach a deal on this stimulus checks and the stimulus bill this very month. So continue watching this video, folks, to find out the latest stimulus news, Social Security, SSI, and SSDI information. So today, President Biden acknowledged the stress on American families' budgets after a key inflation report showed annual inflation has hit 7.5%. Not very right. Not very good. However, Biden claimed there are also signs that we will make it through this challenge. That's what he said, everybody. He said, and I quote, "On higher prices, we've been using every tool at our disposal. And while today is a reminder that Americans' budgets are being stretched in ways that create real stress, there are also signs they will make it through this challenge." Now, the CPI, or the Consumer Price Index, also rose 7.5% in the 12 months ending January, not adjusted for seasonal swings. The Bureau of Labor Statistics also said that Thursday. It was the steepest annual price increase since February 1982 and worse than economists had forecast. But Biden has reiterated forecasts that project inflation will ease substantially by the end of 2022. The report comes as the U.S. grapples with supply chain issues and higher consumer prices as the economy struggles to rebound from this crisis. Now, all this comes during a midterm election year where Democrats are trying their best to keep control of their very slim majorities in Congress, and Republicans have a real chance of flipping control in both chambers. In December, when a report was released that showed the Consumer Price Index rose by 6.8%, the president said he believed the U.S. was at the peak of the inflation crisis. Biden told reporters at the White House it's a real bump in the road. It does affect families when you walk into a grocery store and you're paying more for whatever you're purchasing. It matters. It matters to people when you pay more for gas. Now, since the president has made these remarks, gas prices have risen to a 7-year high. Even though it is clear that inflation is one of America's biggest issues right now, some of the members of the White House defended the Biden administration's outlook on inflation. For example, the New York governor has a new announcement, and it's the $64 million in federal funding will be used to provide one-time payments to struggling New Yorkers, including those with children or living in multi-generational households, to help with their expenses amid the ongoing crisis. This is really good news, everybody, for many people that are currently having financial difficulties. The one-time payments are earmarked to help with the cost of diapers for struggling families, food expenses for households, and provide housing and relocation assistance. According to officials, New Yorkers are still reeling from this crisis, and it includes including many of who are struggling to get by even before the emergency began. The funding, everybody, in New York will provide important short-term relief for families with young children or an older member in their household. So I'm really happy to see the New York State government is actually taking action, sending out stimulus checks to their seniors and everyone that really needs the help. Do you think your state will do the same? Tell me in the comments below.
The economy added a record 6.6 million jobs, more jobs than those added in the first years of the past 4 Republican presidents combined. Workers are benefiting too, with wages growing at their strongest pace in years. And this is particularly impressive because 1 year ago, many economists were predicting that at this point, we'd still be caught up with high unemployment and slow economic growth as the world struggled to deal with the fallout from the pandemic. But this good news has also brought some bad news, inflation. Now, you might think inflation would also be bad for companies. After all, an increase in the cost of doing business would likely eat into a company's bottom line. But that's not happening. In fact, the CEOs of some of the biggest companies have been bragging to their investors that inflation has created a terrific opportunity for them to boost profits. Take the grocery chain, Kroger. Kroger has seen its business boom during the pandemic, with its stock price rising nearly 40% over the past year. Kroger's CEO recently told investors that, quote, "A little bit of inflation is always good in our business," end quote. So, Dr. Boucher, would you agree that it's easier for companies like Kroger to raise prices in an inflationary environment because consumers are generally aware that prices are going up And that lets companies hide behind inflation to expand their profits.
Well, as you know, Senator, President Biden is very attuned to kitchen table budget issues, and he has been very focused on asking the regulatory agencies to be on the alert for price gouging. And I have in front of me a long list of things that have been happening over the past year on his work to make sure that markets are competitive and fair. But let me just note one, which is that they have the Department of Justice and the USDA have worked together to set up a website where farmers and ranchers can say where they see problems in their industry. And that's just one of many things. So it's an important issue.
So an important issue. But the point I'm trying to make here is the companies get to kind of draft in behind the inflation. And I take it you agree that that's what's going on here. Okay, so you're nodding your head yes. I'll take that as a yes. Let me go to another example. In a call with investors last week, the CEO of Tyson Foods, one of the big four conglomerates that controls as much as 85% of the meat market, said they've, quote, restructured our pricing approach, end quote, and are, quote, asking them, the consumers, to pay for inflation, end quote. Dr. Bernstein, if all Tyson was doing was raising prices to offset their production costs due to inflation, would you expect their profit margins to stay roughly the same?
Roughly the same, because
Roughly the same.
their price increases would offset their cost increases,
Right.
which would hold their profits.
Okay, so their profit should stay roughly the same.
Roughly the same.
If that's all that was going on. Of course, that is not what happened. Tyson nearly doubled its profit margin over the year to 11.3%, only the fourth time in the last 30 years that the company has achieved double-digit profit margins. And Tyson isn't making record profits because it is selling more. In fact, it's making record profits because it is charging more. The number of beef products it sold declined 6% over the year, while the price of beef went up 32%. So let's do one more example here. Another phrase we hear thrown around is pricing power. In a recent interview, the CEO of Chipotle said, "We're pretty fortunate with the pricing power that we have," end quote. And that, quote, "if we need to take more pricing, we have room to do it. To date, we've seen no resistance from our customers," end quote. Now, this sounds a lot to me like what Fed Chair Powell said when he was here last month. Big companies are, quote, raising prices because they can. So, Chair Rouse, let me ask you, for those of us who don't speak economist, is it right to say that when executives talk about pricing power, they're referring to a company's ability to raise prices